Everyone's got demons. My demons have names.
Wendell and Wild is the new film from Henry Selick, from a script written by him and Jordan Peele. The plot involves these two demons forcing an orphan girl to do their bidding. That is the simplest summary I could give this film. It's wild to me, no pun intended, that Selick hasn't made a movie in over 13 years? Jesus, I'm old. He had various projects on hand with a few that got cancelled thanks to powers that be, but thanks to the combination of the comedic stylings of Key and Peele, half that aforementioned duo becoming a powerhouse of his own, and that precious moment in time where Netflix cared about animation, got Selick to come down off his high horse to make a new movie of macabre motion. And I'd say it's about time too. He's directed arguably two of the greatest stop-motion animated films ever, and two other things that are interesting to say the least.
The lady got a loose caboose, all aboard. The lady got a loose caboose, on board. Get on the Julie train, on board, Miss Julie Juicy Beauty.
I've been anticipating this for a while now, and I even went to see it in its sadly short and limited theatrical run. And since I live in Portland, which this film was shot in, most of the people in my audience were crew members who worked on this, as well as the upcoming Pinocchio, which was also shot here. Hell, I found out the guy sitting next to me was this film's rigging supervisor. It turned a rowdy crowd experience into a celebration of these talented artists' craft, and deservedly so. It is so nice to see stop-motion animation on the big screen. That experience on its own was pretty great. As for the movie itself, well, when my dad and I left the theater, he enjoyed it and said it was a lot of fun, and I said it was a lot, and yeah, I still feel that way. Going in, I was really excited to see this, not just because of its animation, but also knowing it's written by Selick and Peele. I mean, Peele I don't even need to explain, but Selick is interesting in that he hasn't written most of his own movies, only having done Coraline's screenplay. But even so, that was such a tightly written script that had a lot of its own personality, as well as complementing the tone of the book and his direction perfectly. And on a related note, all his other films were some sort of adaptation of something, and this was his first truly original idea. And he had many ideas for this idea. And Jordan Peele also had a lot of ideas for this idea. And it seems like they used every single one of them. Now granted, the ideas they have aren't bad considering their pedigree, but as I said to my dad, it is a lot. Oh yeah, so spoilers pretty much from here on out. I'm gonna get into like the ending and stuff pretty soon. I suspected something was kinda strange when the early plot synopsis put so much emphasis on these demon brothers, while the girl seemed more like a supporting player. Yet when the trailer came out, it seemed to be the other way around. And lo and behold, that's kind of what the movie is. She's the real protagonist, and the plot does involve her gaining cahoots with the two. But on top of that, it is also about dealing with the grief of losing her parents, and having trouble fitting in with her peers in a new school, and having trust issues with the adults in her life. And her old town is getting gentrified by a big corporation with the intention of creating a prison system. Being in cahoots with and the head nun has a tie to something. And the school has knowledge of demons and the other and his mom is the head of the city council for trying his project. And the two demons and their relationship with others girl has a relationship with their father, the main girl and her parents. Yeah, despite having two writers, there's an awful lot of cooks in this kitchen. I hear that Selick had a different focal point in his original draft before Peele came in to collaborate. Like, the girl wasn't even the lead originally. I may be going out of limb here and assuming stuff I have no real evidence on, but I think I could tell who wrote certain parts over the other. Like a lot of the more kooky, whimsical stuff like the Demon Amusement Park, the Reincarnation Cream, the Hell Maiden things, were mostly Selick's ideas, while the harder-hitting themes of gentrification, prison systems, maybe even some of the grief stuff, were mostly Peele's. On their own, they both have decent foundations to build a story on, but together they're a bit of a weird tonal mesh. So without a plot I could casually follow, how are its characters? Well, I like the main girl fine, and the relationship she has with the nun and especially her parents were some of the better and more earnest parts of the film that worked. The two demon brothers are entertaining enough, even though they could have been in a little more of it. For whatever reason, the marketing plays up the idea that they're the villains of the story, and they're not. I mean, they cause a lot of the conflict that happens, but they are not at all the villains. They're more just kind of comedic buffoons. And also, their character designs completely change halfway through the movie, like they look less abstract, I guess to appear more human or whatever. And you also have the other teen, who's fine. The film seems to want to push a friendship angle between him and the girl, but it felt kind of rushed and underutilized, which is the perfect description for everything else. It feels like every 5 minutes this film puts forth a new story element and a new cast of characters, and then has no idea what to do with them until they just barely scotch tape them together in the end.
And this will all make sense in the end.
I don't really have much to say about anyone else other than the actual villains in the movie really kinda suck. They're the very generic business tycoons who want to bulldoze the town to make room for the mall, the prison or whatever. And then the climax turns into the ending of like the Hey Arnold movie, or I think the new Addams Family also did this, where it's up to our heroes to stop them and save their home. There's other stuff such as weird song needle drops and a very obviously ham-fisted message of families protect their children. And it's so cheesy and rote, and I'm really surprised that Selleck and Peele went with this execution unironically. I kinda expected different out of these two. And it's so funny how compared to Coraline, this feels like the sillier family movie, and yet it has the PG-13 rating. Alright, I'm getting a little mean right now in this movie. Time to double down on things I like about it. Well, for starters, I really like how diverse it is. Selleck said as much in an interview about how white so much animation, particularly stop motion, tends to be, so having a film comprised pretty much entirely on people of color felt really refreshing. Also, the teen boy in this is trans. I did not know that. They did not make a deal of that at all in any of the marketing or whatever, and it's not like the sole trait of the character himself, and I like that. More of that, please. But on top of all else, the real potatoes and molasses of the journey is the stop motion animation kicks ass. I love how each of Henry Selick's films have their own very specific aesthetic, and this one's no exception. It designs everything and everyone in this neo-cubist art style, where they all feel more like shapes stacked together, and hell, Wendell and Wild intentionally look like portraits of Key and Peele drawn this way. I love how flat and two-dimensional their faces are. And above all else, I just love how tactile everything feels in this. A lot of stop motion, particularly stuff made from Leica, while they look nice, rely so heavily on digital effects and smoothness that makes the visuals look a little too polished and perfect, where it looks almost like CG. While in this, everything is deliberately rougher, even right down to everyone's faceplates being visible like it's frickin' Anomalisa or something. While they may do some digital touch-ups here and there, I love seeing just the stitching on their clothes, or the change in texture of their replacement heads, or how I just want to put my hands on the screen and touch them. And the credits show like behind-the-scenes concept art and stuff. I said this before in an earlier video, but I'd love for more animated movies to do this. So in the end, this movie takes a lot of big swings and ambitious ideas, and they work a little less often than they do, but it certainly was interesting enough to talk about. It motivated me to make this video, which sadly doesn't happen often anymore. I like how widely different Selick's films are in their own ways. I'm happy he got a new original film made, even though I still think it's a lot. Regardless, I do recommend checking it out, as it is still uniquely creative in its own right, and I'd rather see weird new ideas than the same bland sameness. If anything, it's appropriate for Halloween to see something strange. Now, if you excuse me, I have my own dumb demons to focus on. It'll make sense eventually, I promise. Peace!